presenting for us today.
Thank you, Eileen. Well done. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Dan. Yeah, I guess the first thing we want to do, I guess, just a brief introduction. You kind of already introduced us, Eileen. I appreciate that. Some of y'all may have seen us for our in-person facilitation business at the realignment group, or if you've seen us online, Construction Accelerator. So that's who we are, basically who we work for. And should we get our polls going, I guess, first, Dan?
Let's do. Eileen, can you throw up the first poll, please? Let's find out about you.
Let's do it.
All right, so go ahead and answer this poll when you have a chance. Are you an owner organization, an architect or engineering firm, a general contractor, a trade contractor, or an other lean organization? Those results are coming in fast, you guys, so it'll be good. And it looks like we have one forerunner, but there are quite a few different people on our webinar this morning.
Very good.
Awesome.
We're going to leave the poll open for another couple seconds here. I apologize for continuing to talk over you guys, but I know that this is a very interactive webinar. There's going to be several polls throughout our different acts here today, so I want to make sure that we have time for everything. Okay, there's still a couple votes coming in here.
We are very confident we will have time both for all the information and all the questions, or mini questions. How about that?
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this and share the results with everyone. So it looks like we have 52% who are general contractors. We're tied at 13% for owners and architects or engineering firms. We have 12% that are trade contractors and 11% that are actually part of other lean organizations.
Glad to hear it. Good group. Well, welcome.
That's a really good even split there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. And then I think we have one more question about where people spend most of their time. We can pop that one up quickly.
Absolutely. So you guys, is it at your home office, in the, well, FOFIS, I apologize, it should be the office, or in the field? And again, I apologize for that. If you have a FOFIS, I'll be very impressed, and I'd love to know where that is.
If you have,
adapt the workplace to work for you. If that's a FOFIS, that's what you need.
If you split your time, choose the one where you spend more time.
Good one.
Or most time. And if there's a group of you in the room, kind of take a vote and see what the majority is real quick. Or just pick one. 1, 2, 3. Throw a dart.
There you go. That works too.
All right, we're going to keep the poll open for a couple more seconds, so keep those votes coming in. We appreciate that.
Wonderful.
And I'm going to go ahead and close this and share the results with everyone. It looks like we have a tie at 37% that said in the FOFIS and in the field, and 27% that said in my home office.
Once again, a very balanced group. I'm impressed.
Very impressed. Cool.
Andy, what are we covering today?
Well, let's check it out. We do have quite a bit of material, so we wanted to put together a brief webinar agenda here. Covered a lot, and it's going to be, you can consider it to be a play in 3 acts if you would like. And the topic is daily collaboration for teams. Act 1 is going to be all about daily huddles, including how to do them, including virtually. Act 2 is going to be how to get work from home teams to work together more efficiently by using Kanban boards. But we hope to show you that it has more potential than just for your huddles. And finally, Act 3 will cover 5 keys to make your virtual meetings better, since most of us are implementing our huddles and Kanban boards virtually, or just having to do a lot of virtual meetings.
Or even great, not just better, even great.
I was trying to undersell it a little bit, Dan, but yes, that is our goal, I think.
Let them know.
All right, cool. So you probably thought you were done with polls for the moment here, but we're about to start Act 1, which is all about daily huddles. And we have one more poll before we really get rolling into things. And this is going to give you give us a better idea of your experience level with daily huddles. Can you put that one up for us, Eileen?
That is up for us. So when it comes to daily huddles, everybody, are you doing them with your team now? Have you done them a few times, but you're not quite sure about them? Do you never do them, or you're not quite sure what they are? Well, I think the results are, go ahead, Dan.
Well, based on your responses, we can tailor our presentation a bit. But go ahead, Eileen. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think you'll find the results kind of interesting on this one. So we're going to leave the poll open for a little bit longer. And I think will be interesting to see how you can make them more productive.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay, we have a lot of votes in. We're going to leave the poll open for a couple more seconds.
Wonderful.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everyone here. So 51% said they do them with their team now. 33% said they've done them a few times, but they're not sure about them. 10% said they never do them, and 6% said they're not sure what daily huddles are.
You got it. So we'll spend half our time on people who already do them with the team now, and half our time on getting you up to speed.
Sounds great.
All right.
Let's roll right into it.
Let's do it. So you knew there would be some cliche sports photo or two when you signed up, right? We're talking about huddles. So what is a daily huddle? First, it's also called a daily check-in. It's a 5 to 15-minute stand-up meeting to discuss the day's work. It can happen at any time of the day, as the name implies. It happens every day. Daily huddle is not the same thing as just a meeting daily. It's a unique activity. It's a focused activity. So let's be really clear. Daily huddles are not just another meeting. They are short, to the point, correctly attended daily huddles.
Very well said, Dan. But let's talk for a second about why we even need them. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's because a guitar gets out of tune. A knife needs honing when it's used. Your relationships, they need nurturing. And your plans, your work needs some TLC too, for crying out loud. The world is a rapidly changing place. Our plans change every day, and we need to respond just as rapidly. By meeting daily, we also have the opportunity to improve upon our missteps from yesterday. Hey, I saw the plans comments you made yesterday. Did you know you weren't looking at the most recent update? On a related note, much of our work affects each other. We need mutual visibility into each other's work. A superintendent may go around and talk to each of his foremen, but those foremen need to talk and coordinate daily also. The daily huddle provides the forum to do that. And that matters for just about any small team. We all know that there's great power in team communication. Daily huddles gives us a simple but powerful way to tap into that.
Indeed they do. So how do we do it? Well, first of all, we huddle, standing, never sitting. Daily huddle is a standing meeting. First question you ask is, what did you get done yesterday? Did you do the work you committed to yesterday? If that work didn't get done, is it going to affect anyone? Second question is, what will you do today? Is it the right work? Do others need different work from you? If you're using the last planner system, it's today on the weekly work plan. The third question is, what do you need from others? Now, this could be for your work today or for work coming up in the next few days. Is there something that you need for your work to do, something you need, something someone else needs to do, or it's some way to do it faster? So 3 simple questions, quick, simple, lets everyone coordinate their work, be sure they're working on the most important tasks or anything that they haven't forgotten. Someone else can remind them. It's not a time for problem solving or tangents. You can derail a daily huddle by going down a rabbit hole. So it's walk up, step together, 3 quick questions, and you check in, answer them, and then go right back to work.
That's right. Awesome.
Now, here's an example. We're socially distancing these days. So there's a daily huddle for those who are working on site. It's a little more challenging for social distancing. So the superintendent will probably still get to his foreman throughout the day. But the huddle provides an opportunity to touch them all at once, to deconflict work amongst them. And we'll tell you a little quick story about a team where deconflicting was a major part of the daily huddle. Now, that photo you're seeing is Lennar. It's a national home builder, builds 25% of the houses in the US. They use Daily Huddles, and both the construction manager and the trade foreman say that it makes a huge difference for them.
Awesome. So the question is, who should use Huddle? As we were just talking about, obviously those in the field, especially those using the last planner system, which is a collaborative planning and scheduling system that includes dailies as one of its cornerstones. But also those in the office, knowledge workers such as design teams, project office teams, or project engineers or PMs, or even those that are in accounting or project controls. And especially those who might be using Kanban boards, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is a simple method of making your workflows more visual. Those folks should update their boards daily, add a huddle. So basically everyone, thinking about it, who wouldn't benefit from increased communication? But a quick note about team size. You want to aim for 7 plus or minus 2 for optimal communication. More than 12 can get to be a real struggle to move through efficiently. This can definitely be a challenge in construction. Half our audience today is GCs, but if you're looking at your team, we tend to think of it as one big team, but you might consider where you can split one into two if you can. Maybe you have an exteriors and an interiors, or you have some other type of way you can break it in and have those morning huddles be a little more quick and a little more efficient. Because if you can decrease that team size, you really can increase the efficiency and speed of your daily huddles.
Yep.
And then for those who are remote or in different locations, let's consider, which is a lot of people, let's consider how to do virtual huddles. The most obvious choice, of course, is to use video conferencing software like Zoom or GoToMeeting, which we're on here right now. We use it every day personally for our huddles. Zoom and Slack make a great combination also. Although we simply use Slack for a while, just putting a thread in there for the day's huddle so we can comment and ask questions. We still use it to make our Zoom huddles go faster, and so we don't forget things that are said verbally, so we can go back and look at it. And while we're not all that crazy about Microsoft Teams, we do have colleagues and teams that use it quite effectively. So whatever tool you choose to use, the most important thing, of course, is just that you use it. You can also use the phone, although that medium is very limited, of course. One of our teams, though, does a dial-in huddle every afternoon with 40-some people, if you can believe it. It's far more than we would recommend, but there's many there from the owner side, and they just want a quick status update on how things are going. But most importantly, they found a way to make it work, and it's quick. I've sat in on it personally, and it's always less than 10 minutes. But the PM is always prepared. That's how it goes so fast. He has a list of work activities. It goes right down. People confirm that work was done or not done, and then people can pipe up if they need some sort of assistance for the following day's work. It's incredibly efficient, very, very impressive.
Amen. Now, in the title of this webinar, we told you that we would show you how to increase productivity 30%. So how do you do that? Well, here's some stories. By getting everybody on the same plan and keeping them there. In the upper right-hand corner of that slide, that photo was taken in 2011. That's John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California. The McCarthy team had some serious delays in completing the interiors for Terminal C, which is the Southwest Terminal. They had a drop dead date of September 9th in order for Southwest to use the terminal for the holidays. And holidays are the big season for airlines. It was the end of May. The P6 schedule showed they had 5 months worth of work left to do, and they only had 3 months left to do it in. So we implemented Last Planner at the last possible minute. We phase pulled the best plan forward with all the foremen contributing their input, and then we did daily huddles. The plan to finish was good, but the daily huddles were the key because the foremen were able to adjust nimbly to ever-present surprises and keep them on track with their promises. And the bottom line on that one is they finished the 5 months worth of work in 3 months, and they finished on exactly September 9th as required. Now, if you do the math, that's a 60% increase in productivity. I would estimate that the daily huddles were responsible for at least half of that. On the left-hand side of the slide, 2012, at Stockton's Clark McCarthy joint venture, they were building a $745 million prison medical and mental health center. They had 18 weeks left before punch list. They were at a $1.5 million a day work in place, which is a pretty decent pace. But they realized they were going to have to double that within 6 weeks in order to meet the schedule. In comes last planner with a full plan for all the trades that they followed religiously, and day by day they executed daily huddles in each of the 7 superintendents' areas. 7 different superintendents at exactly the same time had 7 daily huddles at exactly the same time, 6 o'clock in the morning for them. They doubled production in 6 weeks to $3 million a day, and they finished 5 weeks early. Now, I'd say about half of that 100% increase was the daily huddles. So that's a 50% increase in productivity. A couple of years ago, down the lower right-hand corner, a college apartment builder named Cannon was 5 weeks late with a drop-dead date in August. They were building for a university, and the date was 4 months away. They had a problem. They were 5 weeks late. In comes last planner, collaborative planning, and daily huddles, in their case at noon every day. They made up the 5 weeks and finished 1 day early, 5 months worth of work in 4 months. That's a roughly 30% increase. And both the superintendent and PM said it was mostly due to the daily huddles. So let's get into a few common problems and tips. Andy? Oh, actually, that's me.
I just want to make a comment. I really love those stories in particular you told, Dan, because people really do tend to underestimate the importance of the daily huddle to just take all those little daily roadblocks and problems out of your way, but they really are super powerful for your productivity.
It makes the big difference. Yep. All right, so some common problems and tips.
There we go.
First
all right,
tip,
Dan.
Common problem, starting late. A 5-minute meeting that starts 10 minutes late is now twice as long as it should be. Daily huddles are 5 to 15 minutes. People get impatient. They don't want to keep coming because they don't have their time wasted standing around waiting for other people to show up. So when you set the time for your daily huddle, make sure you ask, when is a good time that everyone can make it? Don't just set a time and expect people to show up. If it's 8 a.m., someone may have another meeting that ends right at 8 and will always be late. If you don't ask and pick a time that works for them and everyone else, you're always going to have this problem.
Absolutely. Another common problem is running long, usually from topic drift. The daily huddle is no place for deep dives or problem solving, as Dan said. Use a parking lot for longer discussions. Say something like, that sounds like a really big topic, or important topic. Let's schedule a time to talk about just that issue, or that sounds important. Let's plan to talk about that after the huddle. Then let everyone go who isn't affected and keep just the people who need to stay and talk about that issue. This really helps keep things moving, as well as keeps everybody happy who just wants to go start the work and doesn't care about, the exterior cladding on level 3. The plumbers don't care about that. For us, we have a standing parking lot where anyone can add issues to discuss after the huddle is over. It really streamlines our huddle, and we find when we focus on doing that, we can get to our huddle super fast, and then we decide if we want to talk about this other list of issues or schedule times or just need to get to work, and we can really kind of tailor the huddle for our work that we need that day.
Good one. And Andy, a third area is lack of commitment. I can't tell you how many times we've heard, I don't have the time. And the half of you who are general contractors on here, got to believe you've heard that. I don't have the time. I got to work with my crews. What do you want me to do the work? You want me to talk to you? So what they really mean is it's not worth my time. But you will save so much time doing regular daily huddles. Time saved not waiting for things you need to get your work done, or redoing something because you didn't know that the circumstances had changed, or time saved because you were planning to perform a task that somebody else is already doing. Ask your team to just give it a try for 1 or 2 weeks if they're not sure, and I promise you they'll see the value after they do it.
Awesome. And then the last one, I already go talk to all of my guys, and I apologize if I'm poking anybody in the eye here. It doesn't just apply to superintendents, so I've heard it from office managers too. You will still probably go talk to most of your people during the day because things will still change throughout the day. Even if you're meeting daily, things are still going to change in between your huddles. But those conversations are individual. You might say they're hidden from others on the team, not intentionally, of course, but effectively they are. And those people don't get to talk to each other. Plus, like I said, that plan is going to change from the time you make it from the first of your folks to your last of your folks. So just do it together. It's far faster. It's more effective for everyone, and you'll be surprised at the kind of spontaneous conversations that pop up between this foreman and that foreman, and the really good conversations you're going to hear.
Great one. Andy, one other tip, and there are a few more. Lead with enthusiasm. If you're the one who leads the daily huddle, this is the moment of the day when you can show true leadership and a juice on the team, or it can be boring and kill their enthusiasm too. If you're one of those blasé persons, you're not used to being upbeat, think of it as an acting assignment. Just step into the role, spotlight's on you, get enthusiastic at least for 5 to 15 minutes. Be upbeat, keep it moving.
Love that. Cool. And you need to appoint a number 2 to fill into if you're late or absent. Also, it helps to make that person your process manager to keep you dialed into the 3 questions. If you're not familiar with that term, process manager, it really means someone who's it's their job to just be focused on, are we following the process? Are we doing the things? Because you can do a daily huddle, and if you don't follow and do the things that you're supposed to be doing, you'll be like, why is it not so effective? Maybe you're missing a few things. So they can make sure you're sticking to the 3 questions, using a parking lot, and help you catch yourself if you start down a rabbit hole. So just someone who's going to kind of keep you between the lines, so to speak.
And it's a great learning position. Process manager is perfect for assistant soups, for PEs, if you're in the office, someone who's a junior engineer, something like that. Let them be the process manager. Finally, always be, third, always be improving. Have the attitude that you're going to get a little bit better every day. I've been working that my whole life, a little bit better every day. If you've had a 30-minute huddle, don't get mad. Just figure out how to make the next one shorter and shorter and shorter till you get to 5 to 15 minutes. Continuous improvement, remember, is like compound interest in your 401k. It keeps building day over day, week over week, year over year, and pretty soon you got a really highly improved team.
Oh yeah, we added a 4th person to some of our huddles recently, and they started getting much more than twice as long, honestly. And it was quite honestly, it was because we were just having a good time talking with the new member of the team. And it took about a week for us to say, hey, how about we go back, let's focus on the 3 questions. If we have other things we need to talk about, and start being more disciplined about using that parking lot. So it can happen to anybody. Occasionally you get off track, just get back on track. And then the last tip we have is blank of the day. So some teams aim to reinforce a certain aspect of their culture or their safety program, say at the huddle, trying to get everyone to focus on continuous improvement perhaps. Have a different person share each day something they improved from the day before in about a minute only, because it's got to be quick. Or someone volunteers to share one piece of good news for the day to kind of keep things upbeat, positive, which creates a good culture on the team. Or you could focus on your lean learning by sharing a lean tidbit each day. Hey, today we're going to talk about Shine from 5S and make sure we're really doing that part of 5S right. Or today might be a refresher on the waste of transportation, and tomorrow about, you pick a topic. But it's a really good opportunity to slip a good piece of learning or culture in for your team that you're trying to reinforce.
Amen to that. So awesome. Act 2. We've covered the value of daily huddles, and if you're a team working on site, you're probably using the Last Planner system, but you may also be part of a team that works out of the office or out of your home, and a bunch of you do. We need to track the reliable completion of a variety of tasks as effectively as we can do in Last Planner. So the next thing we're going to cover is the use of Kanban and how it can help you increase collaboration even among remote teams. Let's see how much experience our audience has today, Andy, with Kanban. Thank you, Eileen. Very quick with the poll. What is your experience with Kanban boards?
So have you never heard of them before? You're familiar but haven't used them. You've used them a time or two before, or you use them all the time.
All the time.
We use Kanban in addition to Slack and Zoom.
I love it.
So electronic these days.
I don't want to play favorites, but Kanban might be one of my favorite lean tools.
I know it is. It's because you're so good at it.
That's fantastic.
Probably just because it's simple, actually.
Yeah, well, and super powerful. We always have a delight face showing when we walk into a team and they've got a Kanban board up somewhere.
Oh yeah. Well, I just love seeing how people get excited about it too when you explain it, and then they can see how much easier and better it makes their jobs. That's cool too.
All right, so we have our votes in. I'm going to close the poll and share the results with everyone. So it looks like 39% say they've never heard of them before. 31% said they're familiar but haven't used them. 21% said I've used them a time or two before, and 9% said they use them all the time.
Cool.
Whoa.
Andy, I think we've got a bunch of good stuff for these folks, and even the ones, the 9% who use them all the time.
Yeah, I'm a little more excited about Act 2 now. This is fantastic. Cool. So we're going to be using our own Kanban board to guide us through this section. You can see the main points we plan to touch on in the backlog down there. And as we discuss them, they'll move to in process and then to done. Hopefully it'll illustrate how easy it is to break up any work into bite-sized chunks and how quickly you can use one. It's simple, but very effective, as we were just saying. So let's first start with what is Kanban, since we have quite a few folks who have never even heard of it, or just a little bit familiar with it. So let's start with a question about that. How do you truly know that someone else is doing the right work? Not that they should be doing it or that you hope they were going to do it, but that doing it in that moment. It's hard, right? Work changes constantly. Unplanned requests come in, so our priorities change. And unfortunately, people don't always follow through. I know I'm guilty of it. So knowing what's going on is a challenge, although Daily Huddles, as we talked about, definitely helps keeps you more in sync with your team. But with Kanbans, the work can help you really organize that. And so the work can change it a lot, and it's a challenge to keep it going without a plan to use it properly. And so depending on what you're using, Post-its can turn into wallpaper, unfortunately, sometimes never being changed or updated. To-do lists are just that, lists, no priority, no time frame generally, and they may be incomplete. And writing on my hand hasn't been acceptable since high school, unfortunately. So one way highly performing teams plan work, do work, and then communicate it is with the Kanban method.
Amen.
And at its simplest, Kanban helps to break work into manageable chunks of the right size of work, standardizes how you work together, and give teams who use it a visual way to interact with the work. Kanban is used in manufacturing, software development, construction, design planning, personal planning. We even use it professional or internally, as we've mentioned. It's versatile and easily configured to your needs. So it's worth noting quickly that Kanban was initially developed by engineer Taiichi Ono from the Toyota Motor Company to improve manufacturing efficiency by improving the scheduling and tracking of production of their cars. And it's just the Japanese word for signboard, which tells us what it's all about, keeping things visual. In the most literal of terms, that is Kanban. And although it comes from manufacturing, we want to use Kanban to achieve work or achieve flow by advocating for pull over push.
Nicely done, sir. So that's what is Kanban. Let's move on to push versus pull.
You got it, sir. And there we go.
Because that's the difference. So a push, as in traditional push system, is where you do some of the work and then you push it downstream for the next person to inherit. It's not based on their request for the work, but based on your ability to process work. And because of this, push systems leave individuals to only focus on their own piece of the work so they can end up creating bottlenecks. Conversely, a pull system is where a worker requests work to process by signaling their upstream customer to create that work for them. They signal this by using, very often, a Kanban card. This is where the word signboard comes in. These tell a worker that work is needed or is ready to be done in the process. And each card will refer to a predetermined amount of work to produce, not too much, not too little. And once the Kanban card request is filled, the worker can then pull it and work on it. And pull systems prioritize the downstream customer and their ability to process work, which in turn means that your upstream customer will be looking at your capacity for work as well. So pull systems look at the process in its entirety and they create flow.
And just a quick note where you might have seen this in your everyday life. If you go to a sushi restaurant and you fill out the little card, you put little check boxes for what you want, you are filling out a Kanban card to give to the sushi chef.
Yeah. So we want to take this thinking of pull requests and Kanban cards and apply it to the challenge of remote work and making sure the workload is balanced between virtual teams and those who are back in the office, for example. So Andy, let's move on to Kanban boards.
You got it, Dan. So let's talk first about the parts of a Kanban board and how to make your own. It's pretty simple. As you can see from this Kanban board, it has 3 basic elements: backlog, in process, and done. Work that is done goes here, as we just saw, and whoever is performing the work is the one responsible for moving the tag and placing it there when they complete the work. And in process is work for currently being worked on. Pretty simple enough. However, the in process column can also be split into 2 or more columns if that is how the work is done. For example, you could be putting together cost estimates that you create and then review before they are considered done. And you want to show where the work is in the process, and you could do that by, bifurcating or making into your process column. Alternatively, though, you could just have a separate tag for that review work in the backlog, and then that moves through your board once the estimate is completed. So either way is totally fine, however you prefer to handle it with your Kanban board. You'll want to set a limit for how much work in process or WIP you allow, though. 2 times the number of team members is a good start. Task switching and multitasking makes us less productive. There's actually a name for this, the Zeigarnik effect, although I'm not confident that I pronounced that properly, but you can see how it's spelled there. It states basically that the information for uncompleted tasks just lingers in our mind, tripping us up and making us kind of unhappy, reminding us of work we have to do, distracting us, stressing us out until we complete it. You want to limit the tasks you have going on so you can better focus on each task. Plus, a bloated in process column usually means that something is holding up work. Limiting your WIP also pushes you to be constantly producing value rather than leaving many things partially complete. Because let's be honest here, all that WIP doesn't do anybody any good. It isn't value until it's done. So if you're over the WIP limit, it's time to swarm, which means calling the team together to unstick, ask why is all this work stuck in the in process column, and then move things to the done column so you're producing that value. The backlog contains the work that needs to be done. All the work from now until the end of days, though, no, of course not. You want to be targeted about what you put in that backlog so you don't clog it up and make it confusing as to what work needs to be done. There are 2 basic types of work backlog you could have, and you'll handle them slightly differently, though. The types are for ongoing operations or project or product focused. A project or product focused backlog might be for, say, a group of designers who are working to create a work product by a certain deadline. Could be a set of calculations or drawing details or layouts. Ongoing operations might be for, say, another group, like a group of engineers that, among other things, process a lot of change orders and RFIs. They don't necessarily know how far in advance what their work will be, but they're essentially handling a stream of requests and then working them as they receive them. And then for that project or product focused backlog, select 1 or a couple of goals to work towards over a discrete amount of time, say a week, maybe 2 weeks. For instance, we will finish this set of structural connection details in the next 10 days, or we will create our building elevations by the end of next week. Then the team populates the backlog by creating the tasks they will work on to meet that goal in the time you've allotted for it. It helps show a rough sequence or priority by placing the most important tasks in that upper right hand corner and the least important in the lower left hand corner. And that doesn't have to be exact, but it gives you a rough idea of where to look up here for the most important work, and it informs how to place tags relative to each other. Hey, I've got a really important thing. Well, I'm just going to have to go up here in the backlog, and these are the tags we'll have to look at to reprioritize. That ongoing operations backlog might not have an explicit goal guiding the work. You just have a bunch of RFIs or change orders coming in, but it's focused on completing the most important of a series or group of tasks in the right order. Because even though you have 10 change orders, there's still some that are going to be more important or time sensitive, right? So in order to prioritize that work, you can draw 2 axes on the backlog. one for time sensitivity on the bottom, and one for importance along the left side. And then you place tags approximately where they belong. And if you like, you can further stratify things by drawing a grid to divide that backlog into quadrants. That makes it nicely categorized, so that puts work that is both time sensitive and important here. So those would be your top priorities. You really want to focus on that quadrant 1. You have time sensitive, but not important here. Don't you love those, by the way? Just, oh, I gotta get it done, but it's really not important. And then not time sensitive, but still important here, which makes for great workable backlog. That's work you take care of before it becomes an emergency. And then you have not time sensitive and not important here, your lowest priority quadrant, some of which you might say, do we even need to do this work? But for both types of backlog, you want to remain flexible and reprioritize tasks as new information comes to light or new tasks are added, which is pretty much all the time, right? Cool. So let's talk about a few different ways you can create your own Kanban boards. Some very simple options include make it as big as you want on the wall. Just throw some painter's tape up there as you see in this photo. Similarly, you could draw your Kanban boards on a whiteboard. That's very handy. Or my personal favorite is to use these giant flip chart pages, like the ones from 3M. Very thick, you can draw on them with markers, they don't bleed through. All would use sticky notes for these options. To save you some hassle, we'll let you know that they won't stick on a wall if it's heavily textured, so you want to use those flip chart pages instead, or if it's over top of the adhesive part of the flip chart page, the top 3 or 4 inches, which is why we always put a title there, so you aren't tempted to put sticky notes where they won't stick, or they won't stick on a whiteboard if you use an oil-based cleaner or one that leaves a film. The main goal of these Kanban boards is to make your workflow visual, so focus on that and then go with what works for you and your team. You are only limited by the materials you have on hand or your imagination. So sky's the limit as far as that goes. However, obviously, if your team is remote, there's some great electronic tools you can use as well. This is, we're showing a picture of Asana right now, which we personally use. You can see the same basic columns of backlog and processes done, which I created. You can name them whatever you want if you like. It's easy to make Kanban cards for tasks and then attach your name to it if you're a responsible person. You can also put due dates, although I personally prefer to think of them as the date I plan to complete the task, so I can see this is what I'm doing on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and kind of make sure I have the right time frame for all the work I plan to do. And of course, and there's no danger of losing sticky notes as the cards progress across the board when you're doing it virtually. So that is a nice benefit. Yeah. If you don't like Asana or if you want to look at other options, there's Trello, which you can see is quite similar, but a little bit more bright and visual. Smart Sheets is another good option, as is Jira, which our software development team uses. And as a bonus, if you're not aware, Asana, Trello, and Jira all have free versions, so you can try it out with your team and just see if that's something that works for you guys.
Very well done, sir. Now, moving on, let's cover how to use Kanban with teams.
Fantastic, let's do it.
So who's Kanban for? Great question with a great answer. It's for anyone who has work and that would benefit from making their workflow more visual to themselves and to other people. In other words, it's for everyone. It could be the PM team, it could be accounting, inspectors, a design cluster group and target value delivery, many others.
You know, it's interesting, Dan, this slide is almost identical to the one we showed about who are daily huddles for.
Yes, interesting, eh?
That's very interesting.
Wonder how that all fits together.
I know, man, sometimes.
How many people should use the Kanban board? As Andy said, a good team size is 7 plus or minus 2. If you have much more than that, your backlog will become big and difficult to manage, and any regular huddles that you have to discuss progress or plan work will bog down and take so much longer. We've already said that. So when you do that, when you bog down, you dampen enthusiasm for the collaboration, for the use of Kanban. So free yourself, have a good tight team. If you have a team that's max size or larger, split them. See if you can break into 2 smaller teams. Maybe every now and then they huddle together on a weekly basis or something.
Yep, perfect. All right, let's see. It looks like how to work with your boards is next.
Let's do that.
Let's take a look at that. So, because of course, once you have your team identified and your board set up, how do you actually use them? Step one is decide how you will prioritize your work, or look at what type of work do I have. Are we going to be setting goals or just handling streams of requests? Because do you have a goal that's going to be due in a certain couple of days, or do you just have the stream of requests? Step two is begin performing a daily huddle with the team to talk over the work and answer those 3 questions in about 5 to 15 minutes yesterday. 5 to 15 minutes, I mean. And then, of course, step 3 is just replan your work regularly. We recommend every 1 to 2 weeks. You'll do a bit of replanning on a daily basis, but as you reach your goals, take time to decide what your next goal is and create new tasks to fill your backlog, as well as shake out your backlog to remove obsolete tags or rethink the overall priority. We do this about every 2 weeks. It usually takes us about an hour and a half or so. But then we do like a little retrospective to see what do we want to improve upon, focus on what we got done, kind of make sure it's done to our satisfaction, and then plan the new work. So you can do it in less time or more time, but you do want to take time to replan that work. And then just a brief note about Post-it colors. Most folks typically use it to show who is doing the work, but if you have work that can be performed by anyone, depending on who has the time, they could also just indicate categories of work instead. So just a little note about that. Whatever works for you, again, make sure that it works for your team and that you're happy with how it's visually showing the work that you need to do.
I like it. All right, Andy, while you got the microphone, why don't you share a few quick stories about how other people are using Kanban?
I would love to, Dan.
Oh, good.
Cool. So we'll put that into in process there. All right. So a group of 3 to 4 engineers working on a high-rise in San Francisco that is actually completing right about now-ish, I think. And they were in San Francisco. They made this Kanban board to help manage constraints. They created a list of issues you can see in the yellow tags going down the leftmost column, which they ended up prioritizing so that the most urgent issues floated to the top. Then they deconstructed each issue into the tasks they needed to perform to solve it, and then tracked each set of tasks and the horizontal swim lanes as they went from to do to in process to done, which that is not something we talked about earlier, but clearly that's another way you can use these boards. And then they also held a daily huddle with the project foreman out in the field, and then they took down new issues that came up and then brought it back to their board in their office across the street. They also used this board to brief the superintendent on the status of various issues, although he was also able to just wander by to get his own updates. Wouldn't it be nice to have constraints this visible and easily managed on your project? Something to think about as a way to manage your constraints.
Yeah.
I also use the Kanban board at home with my wife because the work doesn't truly end just because you go home, right? Or just because you go from the living room to the home office, as some people are doing right now. So we use it to keep track of various home improvement, social, personal, and travel related tasks we want to get done. Don't have many travel related tasks right now, unfortunately, but as you can see, though, that we organize the tasks using the quadrant method, as we talked about, which has really helped us talk through how we want to prioritize new things we decide to do compared to all the things we said that we want to do. And honestly, a lot of our travel tasks have gone to that, important but not time sensitive because we're not sure when they're going to happen. We rethink the priorities every couple of weeks, and there's a steady trickle of tags that move from the upper left quadrant to the upper right as time goes by. And interestingly enough, we put this behind our bedroom door so we didn't see it, and it was there for a couple of months, and we weren't getting a lot of work done. And then, we said we're tired of not getting stuff done on our Kanban board, so we put it next to our dining room table where it's very visual. And wouldn't you know it? All of a sudden, work is getting done. We're looking at the tags, we're adding new tags. So putting it someplace where you're going to see it can help with that, obviously. And then the question is just, if it can make your life at work better, why can't it make your life at home better as well, So that's how you can tell it's really kind of getting into your brain if you're like, hey, I really want to use this at home because it can help me. So on a similar note, I also helped 2 friends that were getting married to plan out the tasks associated with the wedding and save them a ton of stress. The bride was complaining, "You're not helping me, and it seems like you don't even care about all the things we need to do." And the groom just kept telling her, "Just tell me what to do, babe. I'll get it done. Don't worry about it." Well, I had her, list all the work they had to do on the backlog, after which she took a big sigh and said, "It feels so good to just put it all up there and look at it." And he said, "Oh man, I had no idea there was so much work to do. They had totally flipped on how they felt about it. Then, and I don't usually recommend this, they divided the done column into his and her sides, and they turned it into a competition. By the time the wedding came around, he had one more tag on his side of the column done. So he was saying, I won. And she said, no, I won.
Love it.
And Kanban is meant to be used by small teams, but even by yourself, just a team of one, if you want to say it like that, it can be a big help. A friend who works for the federal government was telling me about how much work he has with an ever-growing to-do list, 60 items long. And he was telling me, Andy, I have over 20 things that I am working on all at once. Just imagine how overloaded his brain was due to that Zeigarnik effect. But in general, he just had too much work. I suggested to him he couldn't actually be working on that many things at once, and to try using a Kanban board to make his workflow more visual and help prioritize his work. So he did, and when people came by his office, they couldn't believe how many things he had to work on. One of his bosses came by with a new tasker form, and my friend pointed at his backlog and asked, which of these tasks is less important than this new one? His boss ended up leaving instead, saying, I'll find somebody else to get this work done. And he had a very productive conversation with someone else who wanted him to put together a data analysis. They were able to renegotiate when he would complete the analysis for them based on all the other work he had to do, and all because his backlog was visible and prioritized. Talk about giving others insight into your work and reducing your stress. Cool. So let's put Kanban stories into the done column.
Yes, that's and that wraps up Act 2. So we've covered daily huddles in Act 1 and using Kanban boards with your teams in Act 2. And as you know, with COVID, there's a whole lot of meetings that are virtual. So let's talk about how to make your virtual meetings great. It's time for Act 3, and Eileen, our final poll, right on the spot. Since so many meetings are virtual these days, do you use virtual meetings, Eileen?
So do you use them never or rarely, weekly, daily, or like most of us, is most of your time spent in virtual meetings? And let's see what we have here. A lot of votes coming in, and I'm frankly surprised. So let's see what happens here. Yes, I'm.
You're rarely surprised.
Well, I don't know about all of that, but
you have a good read on the industry and human nature.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
What are you buttering me up for, Dan?
I'll think of something.
Okay, all right, just checking. So let's see here. We're going to keep the poll open for a couple more seconds, so please get those votes in. Again, as Dan mentioned, if you are in a group of people, you probably know this already. So go ahead and take the consensus and go ahead and put that down. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everyone. What surprised me is that 34% said only weekly. And that was tied with the 34% that said daily. So I guess that's something. 21% said most of my time is spent in virtual meetings. I thought that would be the big one. And 11% said never or rarely.
Well, hooray for you. If you can pull that off, that's great.
That's awesome. Cool. And then I think we have one more poll. Our final poll. And that is just getting a sense of what online collaboration app you use.
Yes, so if you spend some time in virtual meetings, do you use Zoom, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams, BlueJean, or is there another platform that you guys use for your virtual meetings?
This is just to kind of get a sense of how people are using it, and the 11% of you who never on a virtual meeting don't need to vote. Unless you just
back, put your feet up.
Unless you own stock in one of these companies and you want to promote it.
Okay. Again, we're going to leave this open for a couple more seconds. We have some votes coming in.
I'm going to guess 40% on Zoom, Dan. Wait, not, oh, probably not actually. I'm going to guess 37% on Zoom.
I'll guess 38 then.
Oh, okay.
Because 40% is their market share.
Yeah, that's probably too high.
Andy 37, Dan 38. Do we have any other guesses here?
Give me an over under here. The price is
Okay.
right.
So I'm going to close this poll and share it with everybody. 37%
Andy, you
uses
win.
Zoom.
Seriously?
Yes. 36% uses Microsoft Teams. 18% has other. 8% uses GoToMeeting, and we have a 0 on the Blue Jean.
I'm shocked and surprised because McCarthy uses Blue Jean. All right, so let's move on and talk about why we're talking about this. How to make virtual meetings great. You know it, your offices used to be what it looked like on the left, and now it's more like what it looks like on the right, where we've changed, work has changed, so we meet virtually. Most of us, all but 11% of us, meet virtually at least once a week, and for most of us, it's daily or almost all the time. Now, unfortunately, it's still too premature for this. Boing. Wish we had that, don't yet. But one thing we have to really recognize, there's a great seminal study on communication done back in 1967, a couple of them, both supervised by Merabian. And what they found was that in terms of communication, 55% is body language, 38% is tone of voice, and 7% is actual words spoken. So how does email stack up in all of this? Pretty poorly, because email is only words spoken. 38% of the tone of voice is generally missing in emails, and 55% missing in body language. Now, if you're doing virtual meetings only using the phone, you're missing 55% of the communication that would be there if you had your cameras turned on. So wise words to think of looking forward always require people turning on their cameras, at least to the degree they have them.
And I was going to make a silly joke about email, 38%, is it missing or just misunderstood? But I think it's misunderstood because it is missing. So we fill in the gaps for the information we don't have, right, Dan?
You know, we make assumptions.
Not the right ones usually.
Very often.
So cool. So keeping those things and those ideas in mind, a well-facilitated virtual meeting can be engaging, collaborative, productive. Yes, it's true. And in other words, not boring. Yes, it's true. We run them all the time. So to help with that, let's cover 5 keys you can focus on: good facilitation, how to modify your agenda for virtual, choosing the right software, setting clear rules, and documenting decisions and action items.
So let's start with facilitation, because it's my favorite topic. If you want to run a well-run virtual meeting, it's very much like an in-person meeting in that it starts with good facilitation. We use the word, the acronym PEN, P-E-N, and so I hold up a pen, as you can see on screen, and the PEN stands for preparation, enthusiasm, and neutrality. You can take far more sophisticated facilitator courses, and there's lots more to learn, but in its essence, good facilitation is PEN. So let's break it out. First of all, be prepared. Know the software. Are there special features for the organizer? Because if you're using virtual and you're clumsy with the software, your facilitation is not going to be as effective. Have a clear, short agenda. Agendas for virtual meetings must be shorter than previous agendas. In-person meetings, you can ramble a little bit. Virtual meetings, you'll lose the audience, and it will be a lousy meeting if you have too long of an agenda. And there's a thing called Goldilocks pacing. Not too slow, not too fast, based on the old fairy tale about Goldilocks and the 3 bears and the soup that was too hot, too cold, and just right. So be enthused as a facilitator, smile a lot, and then every now and then ask the group, how's the pace? Are we going too fast, too slow? And let the group dial things up and down as they need to.
Wonderful.
Keep a list of attendees.
Yeah, you want to take that one, Dan?
Oh, sure, what the heck. Put a check mark as each person talks. Neutrality means level it out. So when I'm facilitating a meeting, we usually facilitate together, I'll keep a list of attendees on the side, and I'll just do a check mark to watch who's speaking so I can kind of see how balanced it is. And if someone has a whole bunch of check marks, time for me to intervene. Neutrality means level it out. As a facilitator, your opinion doesn't matter. Hang on to it. Everybody's got an opinion, blah, 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 but yours doesn't matter as a facilitator because you want to keep it neutral so that everyone else can give their opinions. Keep it interactive. Screen shares we're doing right now, on and off, back and forth, mix it up, make a good use of the chat function. We'll talk a minute about something called a chat storm, and use some collaboration apps. Andy, have you got some suggestions for collaboration apps?
Yeah, dude, I just want to go back quickly to that neutrality thing. Another way you can think about that, if you consider it from the opposite perspective, is that if you don't remain neutral, if you're heavily advocating for a certain issue or a certain side, it really compromises your ability to easily facilitate a session. If people can look at you and tell you're the honest broker, they're going to listen to you and let you guide the meeting a little more easily. And that's not always so easy if you're like the project manager or someone else who's leading the meeting. But it is something to kind of think about and keep in mind that neutrality helps you really kind of facilitate a meeting more effectively. And if you have a big meeting or a big collaborative session that you're doing, you may want to think about and say, hey, can I be neutral? Do I want to get a dedicated facilitator, even if it's someone just from another project team to kind of help you run that meeting? And then, as Dan was saying with that chat function, a way we like to use it, you can use it to send shared documents and links and all that kind of stuff that are being discussed about. But if we're having a back and forth conversation, me and Dan, and we're really dominating the conversation, encourage people to use it to ask questions or make comments during those active discussions. It could be when they can't get a word in edgewise or they just don't want to directly interrupt a good conversation. It's a really good way to hear multiple voices at once, or just help the more shy members of your team to be heard. And I apologize, going back to that screen sharing one too. We like to use it like a whiteboard or a flip chart where you're taking notes if you were in person. Don't use the virtual whiteboards though, because man, those have a ways to go. But you just want to make sure that it's visual, it's helping people track along with the discussion so they can jump in and add to the conversation, and also consider making it bright or interesting to look at. It doesn't have to all be one single color. You have to work harder to keep people's attention, and that's just simple, easy ways you can do it, with just some bright coloring or different fonts and different sizes and that sort of thing. And then going back to your question, Dan, yeah, there's a lot of great and affordable collaboration apps you can use out there. This one's Mural, shown here on the left, or Idea Flip is here on the right. They're like having a big virtual wall where you can put up Post-it notes and ideas and collaborate with your team and all that. I don't think you can use a free version for a little bit, but in general, they're very, very cheap and affordable, like $15 or $20. And then you can just have guests, Mural especially, you can have unlimited anonymous guests come in and collaborate with you on your virtual wall there. So very, very easy to use.
Virtually like having like Post-its on a wall, right? You have the Zoom screen open on one side and you have the Mural app open on the other, and people can see each other, but you're all working on the whiteboard in Mural.
And that's a great point, Dan. Thanks for that. Yeah, the nice thing about Mural, it's agnostic of whatever video conferencing app you use, because you just bring whatever you use and then have that up on, it's a shared space in a separate window. So that's great.
Thanks. Let's talk a little bit more about engagement. You want to somehow engage people into doing things about every 10 minutes. Now, it's not possible in a webinar. We can only engage you about every 20 minutes with a poll, but hopefully we're engaged enough with you that you're engaged. Other ways of engaging the group, chat storm. That's where you use the chat function, but when you tell everyone, okay, everyone put one word to describe this, or put one idea about this, or what's working with this, what's not working with that. And they type the information in chat, but they hold off hitting return until you say, okay, everyone hit return, and boom, all the chats come in at once and you can read through, and it's a chat storm, but it's a way of allowing people to each weigh in at the same level. Live polls like we've done today. If it's a meeting and not a webinar, I like to ask questions individually. If there's someone on my list who doesn't have a check mark or hasn't been speaking up in the last 10 or 15 minutes, I'll call on them. I'll pull them out. And I usually with groups when I'm facilitating, I'll say, as a facilitator, I have a great job. I get to be the jerk in the room. I get to be the guy who interrupts you and says, you've used too many words. Let me help you restate it in a shorter version. Or who says, okay, that's the third time we've said that. Let's move on. I get to be the one who interrupts. And so every now and then as facilitator, be the jerk. And if necessary, move items from what has been the discussion onto a parking lot so we can deal with them later.
Awesome. And just to know that you can be the jerk in quotation marks if you're neutral. If you're not so neutral, you're just the jerk. No question, no quotation marks.
Well said. There's a whole movie. All right, so tell me about mixing it up, Andy.
Yes, sir, you got it. So we like to mix it up with virtual breakout. That's one where not every video conferencing app can do it. But if you have a group of 30 people, can 30 people talk at once? Of course not. So like Zoom can put you into 3 or 4 different groups to talk about different issues and then come back and report out to each other. It's really great for meetings we have to chew through a bunch of issues, split into those smaller groups so you can really get the brain power going and get multiple people talking at once. But if you do that, you do want to set time limits. Hey guys, you got 15, 20 minutes, we'll bring you back. You can always fudge on that a little bit, but people perform better if they're slightly constrained by those time limits, obviously. Also,
it's a really great idea. Just be relaxed, use humor. That doesn't mean telling jokes. Jokes are not a good thing online, and especially the ones you're probably thinking of right now. So just be relaxed and be humorous. Interact personally with people. If you have a personal relationship, like Eileen and I have, we will talk to each other a little bit, interact personally, make good-natured comments, keep it light and lively.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good just the first 5 minutes of your meeting to like acknowledge the fellow humanity of your people and talk to them about their day, because you're missing that aspect when you're virtually a lot of the times. Or have meetings start 5 minutes early so that you can get that kind of person-to-person interaction before the actual meeting starts.
All right, let's move on to tip number 2, or key number 2, I should say, and let's jam through this. Just some reminders. For the agenda, make it clear and shorter than usual because virtual takes longer. Project the agenda on screen from time to time so people can see where we are in the agenda. As Andy said, make a time limit for each item and be the jerk. Say, hey, we got 1 more minute on this item, and then we need to move on. But if the group wants to stick a little longer because they're almost there, get the group's permission to run longer. If you're going to give, a lot of meetings have push information. You just check off all the things that you want to inform people about. You know what? Put it in writing or in graphic form and send it out before or after the meeting. We don't have to tie up everyone's screen time with push information when what we really want is interaction. And for goodness sake, send the agenda in advance with the request, come prepared. And if there's anything on this agenda you don't care about, don't come.
Well said. Yeah, and that, just going back to that projecting the agenda on screen, there's nothing that gets people moving like seeing that we're 1 item into a 6-item agenda and we've used up half our time. All of a sudden people are like, oh my God. So that's good just to show them for that. And I think quite a few of you guys have probably used Lean Coffee before. I wasn't aware of this, but last year I learned that that was originally used to manage meetings. So you can use the same thing where, say you have a list of 10 topics, you just have a 5-minute timer. Once you start a topic, 5-minute goes up. Hey guys, do you want to keep talking about this? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yes, we do. Okay, 5 more minutes. Or no, it seems everybody's done. Oh, I didn't realize everyone was done talking about this. Why are we beating this into the ground? And then move on to the next thing. So having that kind of like rotating timer in your meetings can help as well. It's nice.
Yep. How about software, Andy?
Yeah, software. Let's talk about it. Most people have a preferred app they're already using by now, obviously, and some have options because multiple that their team is trying to use. But please make sure whichever you use that it helps you facilitate easily so you can stick to that shortened virtual agenda. That means easy to use and fully featured, ideally including the ability to use those breakout rooms that we mentioned, and also run polls and record your sessions if desired. It's amazing to us that some apps still don't let you do all of these things. And security. Many apps have had issues with this, and Zoom is probably among the best to jump on and take swift corrective action. And although the stigma still lingers for some, they're all rapidly evolving and regularly releasing new features to improve usability there. So there's obviously a lot of different options. And many have been adapting and evolving over the last few months, as I said. So if one of your teammates can't use a certain app that you prefer, talk to them about why. It might be due to those outdated security concerns like with Zoom, or they might be open to trying other apps if you can host and show them how to use it. Something and just keep in mind, something you tried 6 months ago and didn't like might be radically different when you try it today. So keep that open mind if your current app doesn't have the features you need, because there is another app that's out there that will give you that full suite of features so you can have those really highly interactive meetings.
Let's talk about some rules. Even with good facilitation, the right agenda, the right software, you probably want to keep some rules in mind. And most of you have heard some or all of these, but here are a few we really want to emphasize. Andy?
Cool. Number one, said it once, we'll say it again, turn on your camera and join from your computer when able. We've all been on those hard to understand conference calls where you're like, huh, what? You're kind of scratchy, you're breaking up. It's hard to tell who's talking as well as when you can talk. People are talking over each other, which adds up to it being unengaging. And as if it isn't hard enough to engage people online.
Yeah.
So people are more likely to be distracted and doing other things. We've recently started telling people, even if you have to sign in on your cell phone and use that camera, do it. It's so much better than looking at a sea of black boxes. We've actually been getting pretty good results with that particular line. Use your cell phones. It's surprising some teams meet with. They're like, holy cow, I haven't seen everybody's face in months. So, you know, make that plea, make that request, and maybe your team will surprise you.
Similarly, if you want to be professional and feel professional, dress like you're actually going to work, even if it's casual Friday every day. Doesn't matter what pants or skirt you wear, but from the waist up, dress professionally.
I like that, Dan. You're not asking for much. You're just saying from the waist up.
The waist up. That's why Walmart is selling more tops during the last 6 months than anything else.
That's right. And on a similar note, be aware of your surroundings and consider a virtual background. But with so many working from home, if you haven't seen a messy living room or kitchen yet, it would really be a surprise to me. So cut yourself some slack and others some slack. Tell your team it is okay. Nobody expects everything to look perfect every day, especially with school having just started for a lot of folks. So use a virtual background if you can, but at the same time, don't make people feel uncomfortable about their workspace that they have to use. Otherwise, they're not going to want to do number one.
Very quickly on the rest of them. Number 4, raise your hand and get acknowledged when you want to speak. Facilitators, be very alert and keep your eye roaming around all the different people who are there to see when someone wants to speak. And if you notice someone else is wanting to, say, hey, I think John wants to speak, or Sally's trying to get a word in.
Yep. Related, mute your microphone when you're not talking. If you're not aware, Zoom, for the 37% that use it, Zoom has a nice feature where you can press the space bar like a walkie-talkie, and then just as soon as you take your finger off, it goes back on mute. So that might be handy for you.
Yep. Number 6, no food allowed. Nobody wants to watch you eating. Coffee's okay. The exception is a shared lunch, and we would actually encourage you to have lunch meetings together, just some lunch and learn times, or just some shared meals, or a shared cocktail hour at the end of the day. But during a formal meeting, please don't eat food.
That's right. And the last one, stay seated, or standing as it were for some people, and stay present. And this is really just a thing to, ask your team, hey, we know that some of these meetings got to be long, but we're going to make it as engaging as possible. We're going to try to make it as collaborative as possible. So we ask that you stay engaged and stay present, because it's already so hard to keep people's attention. There's a ton of distractions. So keep focused on what the task is at hand, and that obviously will help your meetings run more smoothly. When, Jeff doesn't have to be caught up in having missed the first 20 minutes of the meeting because he was doing his email or something like that. Jeff.
Andy, we've got 19 minutes left. We want to save time for questions and answers, so let's move quickly.
Got it. So looking at these action items and documenting decisions, obviously that's important. Biggest thing, it's going to be easy to not check and you just see the faces. Is anybody keeping notes? Make sure you designate a separate person, or just have them thrown up on the screen so you know someone's taking notes. You can also keep those and documented in Procore or your other PM software, or if you're doing your action items, pop them into as tags in Asana or Jira, or distribute your notes and then people put the action items into Jira or Asana themselves. Different ways you can do it. But the thing, also keep in mind, keep it short, keep the highlights, just the decisions being made, the action items being done, maybe key notes to understand how the conversation went. Doesn't need to be pages and pages, otherwise no one will read it. And then distribute immediately the same day if possible. Anything to add, Dan?
No, I think that's it. And let's just throw on screen real quickly some of the choices of software. We mentioned a couple of them before. Monday's another one. Just find some software app that your virtual team can share. Let's go on to tips.
Got it.
If you're new to this, do a test run. If you're the facilitator and you're not accustomed to the software, give it a test run. Call up 5 other people to have them jump on a pretend meeting, do a little role playing, test the breakout room if you're using Zoom or Blue Jeans. Use a microphone if possible. Audio is the most important part of video in terms of being really, there you go, I got one too, being really critical. Create a virtual water cooler. If you're on a long-term, as we are right now, basis where people only are online, create a time, have a time where people can encounter each other in an unstructured way. Some standing meeting times that aren't structured with an agenda, just a chat, just kind of sharing stuff, or share a virtual online lunchroom. One of our clients, the Irvine Company, has an online camera across their different offices, so they're always aware in the lunchroom of who else is at lunch or taking a snack break. Slack is another great way. And then mixing in-person and virtual, cautionary tale. It's really hard. Even we've done it with Facebook teams, and even Facebook isn't very good at mixing in-person and virtual. It's just really hard because you tend to ignore the virtual people. So if you're going to do that, have a virtual meeting people facilitator and a live meeting people facilitator, 2 facilitators, because that way the facilitators make sure everyone contributes.
It's really hard because it feels like when you're in person that the people who are calling in virtually, all of a sudden that they're interrupting what is being said.
They're very annoying people. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Last couple of tips. You want to make sure you have standard work for leaders. If you're not sure what standard work is, that's a whole nother webinar we could do. But making sure you're documenting, do we have a repeatable, understood, documented way of doing the regular work we do on a daily or weekly basis? So that's even more essential for remote teams because it's a little bit harder to keep in contact with what folks are doing. And then, of course, doing virtual huddles, virtually or visually, every single team. We like doing Asana or Jira for office teams, as we do. Very simple to use. You can use Plannerly or BIM 360 for design teams to supplement your virtual huddles. And then you can obviously combine it with LPS software if you have it. So,
amen to that. Speaking of virtual meetings, by the way, we're excited to participate along with you, we hope, in LCA's all virtual Congress this year. You still have to wash your hands, but you can do it from home. We're going to be on one of the panels, and so are some of you who are on this webinar today. There are so many presentations and panels and speakers, and the cost is much lower this year because it's all virtual, plus you don't have to travel, so you gotta go. Please sign up for LCI Congress. If you've never been, you gotta go. If you've already been a lot of times, you still gotta go. It's never been more accessible.
Awesome, well said. You can see the link there, right there. And if you find us on LinkedIn, I think we have put we're speakers, so there's like a speaker friend. Actually, that just actually expires today. I think you can get $100 off going. So find us on LinkedIn, and you can find that code and get the discount if you haven't already signed up.
Nice.
And because we love spreading good knowledge and learning, we also want to make you aware of our online learning and training platform, which is stuffed full of 3 to 9 minute videos and references and action items on dozens of lean topics, all geared towards helping your team learn today and do tomorrow, be better tomorrow.
All right, Eileen, do we have any questions to which we can give answers?
Of course we do. You guys are always fantastic in your presentations, so thank you for that. And we do have some questions. I do want to remind people, please put those questions in the questions box, which is at the bottom of the long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen. And they want me to turn my camera on, I know this. So hello, everyone. And we also want those plus deltas now. So remember that feedback. Those pluses are things that you like that we talked about, you thought that was great, you liked that we went over, and the deltas are things that you wish you would have gone into more detail about, you thought we should have gone into it all. So please put that feedback in there and mark whether it's a plus or a delta. So
Should we
really
do a chat storm on that?
It has to be in the questions box, so we won't be able to keep track of it.
Oh, does it? Okay, never mind.
Yes, it does. So I apologize for that, everyone.
That is okay.
So perfect.
Give me a question.
Yes, our first question is, and I don't know who this one is for, but it goes back to Act 1, I believe. And it is, what if my team says I just don't have time to meet for daily huddles? What do you do about that?
Well, first of all, they have time to be inefficient. They have time to go back and do things over. They have time to wait for the trade that was ahead of them and didn't get their work finished in time and nobody knew it because they weren't talking to each other. They have time for that. In point of fact, I think in the three examples we showed you, we can demonstrate that daily huddles contribute to about a 30% increase in productivity. So I think the question to the team is, do you want a 30% increase in productivity? Let's give it a try for a week or two. What could be better? What's a better offer than that? Andy?
I think that is perfectly said, Dan. I have nothing to add.
All right.
Okay. Our next question is, if you have to do daily huddles virtually, and this is specifically about the parking lot, how do you manage the standing parking lot that everyone can add to? How does the team add their input? Do you have a shared document that anyone can access? Their organization specifically uses Microsoft Teams and SharePoint.
Okay.
Great, I'll take this one, Dan.
Yeah.
If you have Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, I'm trying to remember, I think Microsoft Teams actually has a Kanban feature on it. So you could make a parking lot Kanban board if you wanted. You could, a shared document, that sounds great, like a Google Sheets type thing, or Google Docs. I mean, I'm not sure if Microsoft Teams does that. For us personally, the way we do it, we have a shared calendar we all have access to. And so there's that daily huddle invite event item. And so we just add items to that. And then we can any of us can go and look at it and see what's on there. Oh, there's 3 things on the daily huddle after items thing to discuss. I mean, anything that, just make sure anyone can see it and access it and add things to it. That's the most important thing.
And the facilitator, if it's a parking lot item that comes up during the meeting, the facilitator should be in charge of making sure it gets on the parking lot. The process manager, if you have one, may be the one who actually does it, but it's a facilitator's job to coordinate and supervise that.
Yeah, and I guess I should say, because we do have 37% of our folks that are working out in the field. Our teams, the last planner teams that use it, they just have like a whiteboard generally, or a big flip chart page on the wall, and they just write those items there and keep track of it that way. And usually there seems to be action items that come out of it. So they'll have the parking lot and then action items next to it, which turns into a to-do list for the superintendent a lot of times, but.
Which can then become a Kanban board. Yay, it all fits together.
Full circle.
Fantastic. So this is Act 2 about the Kanban board, since you guys seem so excited about that. Sweet. On the Kanban board, how do you handle deadline dates in order to ensure critical deadlines are not missed?
Awesome. So let's see. It depends. If it was a little more specific, I'll have to make some assumptions here.
Well, Andy, in Asana, there's actually a date due. So you can in most of the online programs, you can put a date needed or date due, and that helps you sort that.
Yeah, so there's specific things. I know the trouble that people can have with it is that, say if you're only planning out your goals for your Kanban boards 1 or 2 weeks in advance, and you're working towards a larger task that's say 2 months in advance. And so like, how do I make sure that I'm on track for that? It's sort of like with the last planner system. You have your weekly work plan boards where you're day by day planning the work. And with Kanban, depending on the work you're having to do, you might have to do like a phase pull plan. That's what we did for our online learning and training platform that we mentioned.